Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a pleasure to host you in a live with unique partnership between Asia Tech Journal and Tyke, where we're going to be talking to Shamik, who's the founder of Altor Smart Mobility. All of us have seen him, right? Pitch on Shark Tank India. I think everybody was excited about it, right? My sense is not just people in the business fraternity, right? But I think in general, a lot of people, who've experienced this as a problem, right? Possibly also got excited, right? We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about Shamik's experience of, from building, from prototyping this, conceiving this, prototyping this, and today as a product and being available in the market, right? It's been some spectacular journey. We're going to cover all of that. And towards the end of this conversation, we're going to take as many questions as we can, within the stipulated time that we have, right? We'll try and cover as much ground as we can. Shamik, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashu. Just before we proceed, I just want to, say out a sentence that I've checked a couple of the previous sessions also, and I genuinely think you're doing a brilliant job at this. So thank you so much for, doing this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Shamik. The hero of the moment is you, right? And we're going to focus on everything that you're doing at Altor. Shamik, before we start this session, right, I'd love you to give us a quick round of introduction, and we move into our conversation there.
Sure, absolutely. So I think Altor fundamentally, as an idea, as an entity, as an organization, everything starts from the root problem that we always focused on. That is, reducing accidents on the road, making the road safer. And we of course started out, with our first product, which is a helmet. And the journey, of course, for young engineering grads and co-founders from there, it's exciting, but at the same time, there's a lot of learning. And yes, we can't be more glad, for what we had to go through in order to even get the first basic units out and everything. So that was really the so to say the learning curve there as to what the market wants, and there have been constant back and forth iterations and everything. So with that in, once we completed the first proper device, and that got sort of the love that it's still getting, and it already got in the market. That's something that keeps us going. And yeah, so we are a business. We believe this. We are a business that is running for a cause. That's for sure. I mean, that will always be a priority with us. And yeah, so we love learning, and we'll keep learning on.
Super. Shavik, before we get into the numbers, right? And this is a very, very pertinent topic, right? I mean, road accidents, especially, accidents on two-wheeler riders, right? For two-wheeler riders is a massive problem, right? We're going to talk about the numbers through the course of the conversation, right? But, typically when I get an opportunity to talk to a founder, right? Who's doing something so impactful, right? It's business, yes, but it's also impactful, right? I think you're trying to change the landscape of how things have been dealt with, right? Emergency accidents, so on and so forth, right? There's usually a backstory, right? I'd love to understand, what motivated you to, think of a problem. Typically, a lot of people will give up on this problem because, there are just too many moving parts in it, right? There are too many agencies involved, approvals are required, right? So there's a large process, right? You picked up this as a problem. Is there a backstory? Would love you to.
So definitely, definitely there is a clear backstory, and we spoke about it in the Shark Tank episode as well. So one of our very close friends back in the day when we were in college, and we all were very, so to say, those young and free minds, and people wanted to, try and do several stuff. But then one of our friends eventually lost his life in this sort of a circumstance, which really shook us quite a bit, because that is also sort of where we got to see in person what it looks like, right, on the body, what it turns out to be. Like it's different hearing about accident, and it's different seeing it on the body of someone, the impact on the body of someone who who's very close to you. But definitely that shook us quite a bit. I mean, probably it's a lot easier for me to speak about it now, but back then it was really a thing. So also that really got us to think that, of course, definitely there is a purpose for all the tech that out there, but something as pertinent a problem as this has to be dealt with, right? In some way, shape or form, and someone has to lead this journey. So we always believed in ourselves as individuals. That is something we've always done, because me and my co-founders, the whole team at Altor, we always focus on this when we get new people also. There is a sense of belief of something that you can do, and definitely with the right amount of effort you can make it happen. So that is sort of, I would say, the major ignition point. Like in the history books, we read about causes of war, and there is that ignition point at the top. But even before that, I'm sure all of us, happened with us also. Like every family, every individual knows someone in the family, some uncle, some elder brother, someone who's faced some sort of an accident. in the bikes, in the two-wheelers. And when we sat down to understand and research more about this, we realized a common pattern. That is definitely the first, of course, is there is a definite history of that person already exhibiting some bad behaviors of riding which are not healthy and stuff. Also, major part that after an accident happens, the detection is very important, timely detection. Right. So we spent like in our initial days when we were incubated at IIIT Hyderabad. So we got a very good exposure with the Apollo Hospital, their whole system. So we sat down with the doctors, we tried to understand what exactly happens there, what is sort of the requirement, that golden hour concept, how quickly this should be done. And that sort of really helped us in the early days frame the solution. So definitely that's the desire. Plus every day, even today I was just coming from. Right. So we heard about someone facing an accident there, and every such case motivates us all to get there.
I'm sure I personally, and I'm sure each one of us who's listening to this conversation now and later is going to resonate with this. Absolutely spot on. When you highlight that, I think everybody, each one of us, this is something which touched us in some way or the other. Road accident is something which is, I think, all of us are familiar with. This is something which is so common in India. Shamik, I'd love you to spell out what's the current construct of Altor, right? Where are you right now? What's the range of products that is available, currently? And I'd love you to spell out some features. I mean, features, right? You alluded to some of the features, right? There's a lot of machine learning, for example, that you've integrated, right? There is a very clear point of IoT that you kind of spell out, right, in your conversation. I'd love you to capture all of that and give us the current construct of where you are right now at a product level.
I think it's really something important that should be addressed also. Sure. So, of course, most people know us through, back when they saw us in the Shark Tank with that fully built-in smart helmet, right, that we were offering. So we spoke about it in the show itself that were telling us that, we wanted to focus always more on the technology and not necessarily on the bits that we control, we don't control that. So that helmet section is already on. So we have received an immense amount of orders in that, and we are fulfilling them currently. So that phase is absolutely taken a couple of new variants around, and we entirely sell currently through our own website, because we want to. That's very intentional, because we want to have that sort of a niche in this, that it's not available elsewhere. It is available that also, and we believe that's sort of the belief that because of the sort of plans we have down the line also, in order to build a community, this is a very important first step. So with that aim, the major change that we have taken up over the last 6 months or so is shifting to modules. So what I mean by modules is, anyone, rather than having to buy a full helmet, can simply get a small attachable device and clip it onto their existing helmet and make that a smart helmet. So all the features that we offered in that full device now is transferred into one small module. Now that opens the market up immensely for someone like us, because now customer also doesn't have to pay for a separate headgear. Plus for us, the quality control challenges and the problems related to shipping and all of that gets a lot more reduced to a great degree. And that is the scalability plan for us. So we have made that product shift internally. And right now, of course, as I told you, that helmets, those are being fully built-in ones, are being shipped to customers. And also for this, the module solution, we have already, so that's why I'm in Pune currently, we have already started working with a few clients for the B2B, pilots, where, especially after Shark Tank, we have received fleet interest from close to, 12 to 13 fleets, honestly. And we can't be more happy about that. But it's also, with this changed tech we want to spend time on this first client that we're working on to a good degree, because we want to absolutely nail down the solution and then just replicate it for the others. So the requirement is same.
That's an interesting shift, Shamik, right? But I have a small point and a concern, right? Now, when you look at the helmet market, right, we have, it's a massively unorganized market, right? It's like a little cottage industry which is going on, right? And you have this distribution which is all spread out, right? You have pathways and footpaths where helmets are, for example, being sold, right? People wear it largely because they don't want to. There's a fear of getting challan, right? Right, and that's possibly the reason they tend to pick this up, right? The problem is that this does not solve the impact and the intensity of impact, right, and the repercussions beyond and the point of accident, so on and so forth, right? The shift needs to essentially happen there. Now, when you choose this path of, for example, creating a module, right, which is, say, detachable, can be attached to any other existing, say, hardware that I have, right, or a helmet that I have. right? Does this not solves the purpose completely the way you ideally want it, right? Because in the first place, the idea is to save the individual, right? What's your sense of it? How do you see this?
I think that's a great question. So if we take a little more nuanced look at it, so of course, like from a consumer perspective, number one thing, especially in a country like India, it has to be affordability, right? So someone has to get it to a point where that person first can purchase it, and then so because it's as sad as it sounds, safety is a secondary problem in a developing country. So here, like the value of human life, so to say, as we perceive it, amongst the peers, right, amongst the society, is much less as compared to, say, what a developing nation does. I'm so sorry, a developed nation does, the likes of US and Europe. So this is where the primary challenge comes in. So we strongly believe that, if something requires 100 and we are currently at 0, it's never a one step, direct to, it's a perfect, right? So that never happens. That's unexpected, like unrealistic to even think. So the idea very clearly is to get in there, to have sort of the awareness spread out with the products, because that's also why we had to work on the design bit, work on the initial functionalities bit, something that solves an immediate problem, and with that you sell safety, right? So that is very clear hitting, especially in keeping with the mindset of the country currently. Now this of course will change over time, and we are here to completely bank on that once it changes. But right now the game is very simple, that you sort of ease the barriers of onboarding with such a product, like us.
So, Shamik, I have a small, despite maybe a clarity, right, that you can provide there. Now, if somebody is fundamentally compromised on buying a helmet, right, so something which is just so much more critical, right, and that could be because of cost concerns, right, and India is a cost-sensitive market, right, and like I said, right, you kind of alluded to it, right, that we don't take life that seriously, vis-a-vis how it's taken outside the countries, right. Now, don't you think when you provide such modules, such devices, that essentially you're cannibalizing into your own market, right? What's your sense of it? Right? How do you see that? You could possibly also give me a sense in terms of, what's your larger market right now, which we're going after? Is this a market which is slightly more mature, which is aware? Riders who have expensive gears, who might not necessarily want to shift. Is that a priority market, or are you going after a generic, rider, or say a delivery business, right? For example, riders in the delivery business, right? Are you going after them? What becomes your priority in that case?
I think again a very important and very good question also, Ashu. So primarily I would answer the first part, that is, what is sort of the idea there, that is the headgear getting compromised? So who is sort of that initial user base, right? So definitely this is something that, again, we believe in, that innovation has to trickle down. I mean, in the sense that if we look at it in the form of a funnel, it first has to be absorbed by the top tier, then it will come down and percolate slowly. So this is something that has been proven over and over again in the world of innovation. So we genuinely are, so to say, working on that. Now, it's very important that, again, what we are targeting here is, we are working on the B2B front, right? So where we are offering to the fleets. So there the offering is very clear. It is something that is mandated, because they are employees of the fleets, the riders there. So mandating something is a lot easier in that regard, wherein there is very clear instruction that you have to, if this device is not worn or if this data doesn't come, then that person is directly accountable. Now, to hold that level of accountability to an individual consumer, that is not something that the market is ready at this point in time. So definitely what we want to do is, like, again, it's very important that if it's a 0 now, and if we are looking at 100, we start with a 10, a 20, a 30. So we are onboarding them into the system, that, okay, have a look at this smart headgear, something that will excite you, something that will help you with some problems immediately. Now, very importantly, the speaker and microphone setup, the internals, what has to be done for our current setup, that cannot be done for those, very basic, like a 500 rupees helmet, which is the ones which are, often sold on the roadside, just to avoid the challans, which you alluded to very rightly. So, that. So it is not definitely catering to that market, and that market won't be able to use it currently. However, they can access it via the fleet platforms if they're fleet riders themselves. So we have to choose, like pick and choose. So the target primarily is to get it to as many day-to-day bike users as possible, which are the fleet components very clearly. Right. So those are the ones who spend the most amount of time. And secondly, right after that, it will be the priority of that mid-range bikers, people who have that awareness, who know people like you and I, who are not definitely amongst that premium, that belt, the top 1%. Yeah. But definitely people who are aware and who want something but cannot afford something, say a 35k or a 40k device, right? So they would want something that we have currently. And the idea of the system.
Super. Shamik, I'd love you to break it down, right? In terms of what are the features. So, for example, when you're talking about a B2B environment, typically B2B environment is slightly more tapered down, right? B2C is you can actually go out, experiment, have multiple combinations. B2B is more definitive, right? And that's largely because there is a third party involved, right? In that purchase process. What are some of the features that you are? What are the features that you're going after, or which are built in into the current offering?
Great. Yeah. So as you said, it's very specific for the B2B guys. So what they're looking at, number one, is whether the rider is wearing the helmet or not. So we check that. That's the first of its kind again in the industry that Altor does. Second very important thing for them is the behavior modification. So we track all their riding behavior. We understand whether he's a good rider or a bad rider in the simplest terms. And we also provide him inputs on how he can become better as a rider. So that is a self-correcting loop, which is very important because the B2B fleet owners don't necessarily want to spend their minds in educating the rider. Altor completely takes care of that. So it's a completely behavior modification system which is self-correcting. And thirdly, of course, a very important feature of accident detection. In case of any mishap happening after all of this training and everything can happen, we cannot deny that. Immediate detection and information to the hub, the nearest hub. So it's a very clear requirement that we're working on with them, and so far, that is where we see the scaling opportunities, of course, because right now we are in a world, in a scenario where I think no one needs this. Through this discussion, we all are aware how massively under pressure these brands are in order to with this under 10 minutes, under 20 minutes, all these delivery schemes, and many accidents coming up every single day. So that's clearly the primary pathway. Of course, I think it's worth mentioning here that our second revenue model is, because we are already making the hardware and we primarily want to focus on the B2B front. We don't necessarily want to take the distribution, sales and marketing for that device in the B2C end. But we are working with partners. We are working with partners which are big names in the industry, where they can leverage their distribution and sell this device with their branding. So that would really help push the brand. And we don't have to necessarily take care of the sales and marketing front of it, and we can focus on this B2B end. So that's
interesting. Shamik, there are a bunch of other very, very interesting questions, right? But before I get into that, right? That's on the moat and your ability to price your product, so on and so forth, right? I'd love you to talk to us a little more about it, right? So in an environment where a rider is wearing your helmet, or there's attachment, right? And there's an event of accident, right? How do you, from there on, how does it take shape, right? Now, are you offering a more elaborate platform-like approach? Is that the purpose that you have, or are you essentially an indicative? You have an indicative engagement, right? Where if an unfortunate event happens, there's a buzzer that goes up, or there's a certain intimation that happens, right? The prerogative becomes that of the company that you are you enabling this with. Is that a right understanding, or you are doing it end to end, saying that we inform the closest say hospital or whatever actionable that needs to be sort of done?
I'll clarify.
Share a little more about that, please.
Sure. So I think definitely what we are starting out with is a bit more on the indicative front. So we are taking control of what we can control the best, that is detecting that mishap immediately and sending out that information along with the location details to the preset emergency contacts. So definitely that is the first step. Down the line, we are also in discussion with several partners who can offer trainings, rectification programs, because for all these B2B clients, what we have understood the requirement is conveying that information is the first key thing that they need. Once that is conveyed, they often have enough resource to come in and take them to the hospital and take care of the next steps there. So also, I think it's worth mentioning that we are planning on several, so to say, seminar and
awareness campaigns,
workshop models, which we're already in discussion, where we genuinely feel this behavioral change has to happen at a very, integral level, where, the riders are often told, they often miss out on the fact that what can go wrong, right? So that teaching, that idea has to be very clearly communicated.
Interesting. And I think that also becomes your moat and defense in the process, right? to a certain degree, not completely. Shamik, an important question, right? Now, given that you're going after B2B environment, right, and I'm sure this is something that's going to be relevant for everybody, who's listening to this conversation, right? Now, B2B is a very, very difficult medium, right? As say an IP owner, as a brand, as an organization, as a company, you have a very limited ability to upprice your product, right? And that's largely because their profitability, it's a cost of doing business to them, right? And in a business environment, you continue to try and curtail that cost, right? How do you look at that? Because like I said, your profitability is going to be very different in a B2B environment and a B2C environment, right? Tell me a little more about it.
Sure,
How
sure,
are you thinking about that?
Sure, definitely. So I think, you touched upon a very important point that for B2B, usually it's, very something that's a cost of doing business to them, so that they generally keep that in mind. So the way we see it is, there are several value additions that Altor can keep doing down the line, right? So a couple of them would be, like right now, we are entirely doing this at a monthly subscription basis. So that entire thing of the B2B guy paying for the hardware is done away with. Because very honestly, no one is ready to pay for that hardware as a capex cost. That's what we have learned on the ground. So this subscription model is number one. So it eases, the processes of severely, number one. Secondly, of course, down the line, what primarily Altor is doing is risk analysis in the simplest terms. So we are in touch with several insurance companies also, where definitely down the line we see Altor adding a lot of value in the insurance. So what happens is we can provide this entire data to insurance companies, and they can offer attractive premiums in the sense of a pay-as-you-drive model or a pay-how-you-drive. So this is something that's really getting popular in the West over the last 5-6 years, with a lot of unicorns coming up, and it's catching up in the Gulf, in the Southeast Asia and India. So we definitely see this as the way forward, with Altor playing a major role in InsurTech. And very importantly, so once we have enough rider and their data, we hold that certification authority for them. So whether we actually, with our system, it actually comes out the most unbiased form, whether someone is a good rider or a bad rider. So we can use that data to help companies recruit their riders. So the rider recruitment market is also pretty unorganized in the country right now. There are several individual players which are working on mostly locally. So we want to definitely consolidate that down the line with our platform. So these are some of the very key sort of revenue potentials in this B2B space. And yeah, that's definitely the way we see it, rather than not just looking at increasing this particular price. So it's often easier for them to pay when they have something valuable right in their hands.
That makes you working capital heavy, right? That makes you working capital heavy. I'm going to come to that point in just a bit, Shamik. But what I want to cover before that is that right now you are we've not talked about competition, right? Now this is a space which has had legacy brands, right? I mean, you have the Steelbirds, right? You have a lot of branded as in automobile companies, they're coming out with their own brands. There are partnerships that are going on, right? Now this is a space which has been, people have been spoiled for choice, right? And then there isn't this massive unorganized market of sorts, right? Now, what you're offering right now, you're kind of taking a slightly safer route, right? Which is that of allying yourself, right? And walking your way into this market, right? Creating a niche and a position for yourself through the course of this thing, right? But the fact of the matter is you're still sitting on somebody else's infrastructure, right? And when I say infrastructure, it's essentially hardware, right? You're leveraging that. Now, the pie that you are going after, my sense is a lot of these guys are also looking at the same pie, right? Tomorrow, a lot of these features can be built in their hardwares, right? What's the defensibility, right? So two things, essentially. One, about competition. Second is defensibility in the process.
Sure. So I think very interesting you mentioned competition here, because that safer route definitely is in the form that with the modules we are not directly competing with the helmet brands anymore. They are completely out of that. So if I take a look at competition for us, for the modular solution, the competition is a company called Senna, which is like sort of a global leader in this. They have been in it for a while, but they target only the premium biking base, and the entire mid-range bikers are left behind, which is the volume in the developing market. Right. So definitely, the way we see it is, yes, of course, these companies, the likes of a Vega, Steelbird, or Hero, Royal Enfield, they can of course definitely, if they want, do it themselves. But the very fact that we are already number one, partnering up with these brands right from now, right, which is sort of breaks the ice. So there is now no need for them, number one, to do it because we are helping them in getting that done. Because it's a very costly business for them, right? So in that way. Secondly, we of course have protections on the design front, and really what we believe, because we don't really believe in today's world you can just protect a hardware like that. You cannot.
Sure.
So the entire point behind that is this community building and marketing. So definitely that's the way we have planned it out. And that's sort of going to be the moat for us, the biggest, the community, the belief in that mission. So anyone trying to work anything around that would often have to refer, okay, so this is like Altor. So that's definitely something that we are working on. And also down the line, I genuinely feel that this is something that can really sort of expand in and across the subcontinent as well. So once there is a decent push in the form of devices out, plus with our whole point of having this community backing, I definitely think that that's the way forward for us. And also to break the ice initially, we are already working with these guys where we can sort of use their brand leverage to push the brand, to sort of build credibility on our side.
Right. What I've realized, I think one thing that I've realized, right, typically is when you're piggybacking somebody else, right, their brand, the credibility is essentially theirs, right? As an added on brand, I think you don't necessarily create the kind of impact that you're out to, right? An impression on the customer that you want to, right? I think a lot of times, often it has to be, you have to take a slightly different approach and build an independent relationship, right? For that recall to sort of happen, right? That brings me to my next question, Shamik, and we're towards the end of our conversation, and I'm going to open up the floor for more and more questions. Last two questions. Essentially, what's the plan on the B2C front? Because I'm sure as a founder, as a creator, you're always tempted to have a direct relationship with the customer, right? You've chosen a path that you have, right? And that there's a very clear logic behind it, because it gives you a lot of market understanding. It gives you a lot of intelligence, right? Which can eventually be embedded into or be built into the B2C side of things, right? But what's the plan on the B2C front to understand?
Sure. So definitely, it would be completely wrong to say that we won't explore the B2C end of it. We definitely will. Of course, I won't be able to share, say, when exactly or so, but definitely that's a part of the bigger plan, where the whole purpose is to get, while, of course, you are at the initial stages where, there is still a lot to gain by being what we are, being currently.
Sure.
We will keep leveraging that. And definitely, we strongly believe that once the brand positioning properly is made, along with that, credibility in the market that's out there, we definitely would be able to look at the B2C options down the line. That is for sure. And also to touch upon your last point, definitely, that something that's an add-on is often, not directly a credibility, but mostly that of the brands, which is offering it. I would slightly differ here because, after the sessions we have had with the likes of Royal Enfield and Payman, so there is a ton of competition in the helmet market also, which you touched upon. So there are quite a few big players who are fighting around. So any bit of differentiation is a massive win-win for them, right? So they can offer that out, which their competition cannot in that front. So definitely that's something they are backing up.
Interesting. We can agree to disagree on that point, right? But I'm going to save all of that for our next conversation.
Sure.
Shamik, like I said, last question in this series, in this chat. What are the numbers like currently? And if you could share a little more about the cap table, right? And what is the kind of valuation that you're seeking and spends that you plan for yourself? Correct.
So, of course, like the cap table currently is having around a 30% of the investors and around, I would say, roughly 10% of ESOPs for 60% of the founders. So that's sort of where we are at. And honestly, at this point, this is definitely something that we believe in, that the best option for this particular round is a convertible note round. So that's what we are doing. The valuation is a floor with a floor of 25 CR and a cap of 49, and we're offering a discount of 20%. So this is something that we have worked on with our lead for this round. So we are raising a bigger round, which is led by a micro VC, and then there are separate angels coming in and several other firms also joining us.
Interesting, super. Shamik, I think we've tried to cover pretty much all of what we wanted to, right, through the course of the conversation. But we're going to now bring in people, all enthusiasts, right? I've been seeing a flurry of questions, which have been coming our way. We're going to try and cover all of that. I'll have possibly the first 2 or 3, and then I'm going to open the floor for them to come in directly and take it up. The first question, Shamik, that we have is cost of the helmet. Will the cost of the helmet decrease, right? I think possibly somebody who joined a little later I think missed out on the part, right? But if you could, spell it out again, that'd be nice.
Sure, absolutely. So definitely, like, sir, whoever asked this, definitely the cost already has reduced if you have been following us for a while. So definitely it can also down the line, but we have to understand that, we cannot sell anything too cheap, because, then that doesn't solve the purpose. So anything, right? So Aman sir often uses this, the founder and CMO of Board, that, zyada sasta to nano bhi nahi chala. So definitely that's not something we want to go. It will be optimum. It will be optimized even further. It is already, it has already reduced a bit. Definitely, so you can keep a look.
And I think the good part is that today a lot of fintechs have come in, right? Financing is available, buy now, pay later, or something. I think it was an Apple conference and that was set out, right, that every company will eventually be a buy now, pay later company, right? So I think financing options have made it really, really easy. I think eventually, as awareness gets built in, people are going to get more serious about their health and safety, and I think that becomes the winning sort of that inflection point for Shamik and you and your team. Next question, is there a cash out to existing investors, right? So are you cashing out any of the existing investors in this, the current raise that you do, Shamik?
Right. So not any of it currently. They have the options. So we are wanting to trigger that from our next fundraise. So yeah, definitely we are in very good relations with them also, and they have been backing us right from a very early days. So it's sort of more like a family there. And yeah, definitely we would like to, because for the business purpose they all understand it. We would like to cash them out, to a good degree, but in the following years, not in the current.
Interesting. Okay. What's the growth plan of the company?
Right. So right now, currently, I mean, if I have to give a little context, so at the Shark Tank stage where we had just started selling with, I would say, an interest from roughly about 1,000-1,500 riders. Right now, we have a pipeline upwards of 1 lakh plus riders who are waiting, just for the solution. So primarily over the next 12 to 15 months, our focus would be to complete this sort of a pipeline that we already have in place. After that, it's a very clear idea. So we genuinely believe that this is a product that we need to really focus on word of mouth and, a growth from there. So every fleet owner conversing with the others, that's sort of the part of the conversation that they have. And genuinely, we strongly believe that, as a part of the growth plan, we would want to expand, or rather keep our focus entirely in the developing world and not really focus on the US and the European market. So our target markets currently, definitely priority India, then Southeast Asia, where we have a ton of interest already from, similarly the Gulf, and similarly the other countries of the subcontinent and Latin America. So that is sort of, we want to reach to a certain number within the next 4 to 5 years.
But I think given the density of two-wheelers, right? I think India and Indonesia is going to make possibly a lot of sense.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Is my sense, right? I think next question, Shamik, a little too early in the conversation. I think given that you just started out, is what are the exit plans for the promoters?
Sure.
Like I said, a little too early, but
sure. No, I understand where they come from, of course. So definitely one of the options is exiting in the subsequent rounds. We are happy to have conversations based on that, like for individual investors. And of course, we are looking at like the two most famous options. One is of course an acquisition in future, and definitely an IPO. So we are of course more inclined towards the IPO bit, but we can of course keep all our doors open. So any of that would be, I'm sure, a lucrative exit option.
I think, Shamik, what will be interesting to know also is, what are the upcoming products that you have, right? So, I think, when you talk of IPO, you're not talking about one product, right? I think it's literally impossible, right? Absolutely. You eventually become a bigger player, right? With many, many offerings. I think something that you alluded to in the conversation is that a platform-like approach is what you'd possibly take, right? If you could possibly a very quick 1 or 2 lines that you can, or 1 or 2 points that you can give out, that'll be nice.
Absolutely. So definitely we want to expand the entire product line along the B2B bit, which we discussed, the InsurTech side, and of course the recruitment platform side, and so on and so forth. And on the product side, definitely we keep innovating with the hardware. So right now we are definitely focusing on this two-wheeler and the headgear category. We can expand along other lines of vehicular communication as well. And for the helmet communication also, we have very clear modular plans for our next couple of units. Of course, in the form of intercoms, in the form of lights for better visibility and stuff like that. We want to establish ourselves as the go-to player in sort of the bike accessory category as well as the safety category.
as the Royal Enfield of accessories. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. A question that we've already covered, but it's come, so we're gonna talk about that. What are the entry barriers, right? Something that we covered, that you will possibly end up cannibalizing your own market, given the approach that you picked, right? What's the entry barrier if others choose to follow suit and position some of these features as the differentiator vis-a-vis others in the game?
Absolutely. So I'll So what I really want to focus on is, of course, you and I touched upon that point. But if we really have to focus on what's the moat here and what sort of the entry barrier, that primarily would be the brand, definitely. Because it's a belief. We very strongly believe that you cannot just protect a hardware with anything. So we have had insane amounts of experience, people discussing this with us and so on and so forth. So it has to come from the community, that sort of a aspirational factor that we are working on the design front, of course on the tech front as well. And that we believe would be the biggest move. Of course, we also do believe that putting the word out already with the sort of leverage we have, we can do that pretty successfully down the line. And these partnerships that we are working on, these are definitely our ways of getting a taste of the market, getting a taste of what sort of nuances needs to be dealt with when we want to get into it ourselves. So that's the way we look at it. And of course, the innovation is we believe that that's the constant key. So at Altor, primarily both from the software and hardware front, we're really focused on constant R&D and innovation. So we've read this somewhere, I'm not sure which book, but definitely this is, I'm sure everyone would agree that you can always innovate, your competition can catch up, but by that time you should already be 2 steps ahead. So clearly we are working on that.
Awesome. What is next question, Shamik? What's the year-on-year growth? Are you profitable? And what's your PAT?
Sure. So no, we are not profitable yet. We've just started selling from the last quarter of 21-22 FY, and so the growth has been 15, say a 5 lakh per month to a 15 lakh per month post the Shark Tank. That is also very pessimistic. The reason being, as we discussed, that we are stopping the helmet sales after a while, primarily because of this shift. So with this new sort of a revenue model already we have secured one pilot for 3,000 riders and another partnership with Royal Enfield for a 5,000 unit trial already in this current year. So this year our revenue would jump from 5 lakh in FY 21-22 to a 1.75 CR in FY 22-23. So this is sort of the current scenario. We are not profitable yet. We look to be profitable by the end of FY 25-26 with the plans that we have in place. We do make money on each individual sale on these transactions, but we really want to put it back in the growth currently.
Interesting. I think there's Shamik, there's a question on free cash flow, right? Now, given that there is a certain time to profitability, right? What is that stage when you get to a free cash flow sort of a position, right?
Sure.
How many units, for example, are you looking at? And possibly, what's the term that you're looking at, right? 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. Would have preferred that.
Absolutely. So, as I said, in order to get the existing sort of system into break even, what we are looking at is a 1 lakh rider in place. And in order to really drive down or to double down on the profits, we are planning, sort of like that's how the system is being worked. There's a clear gross margin of 75% on this entire B2B solution that we're offering, and we want to leverage that. So definitely from the 3rd year onwards, we are looking at making a profit, and thereby we take it forward from there. Yeah. So that's of course that stage where we can expect a free cash flow.
Okay. Next question, second last question. What's your current return on capital employed? What's the current status?
Right. So I think if I go by the standard definition of ROC, that won't make much sense at this stage of ours, where has to be a clear EBITDA and stuff. In terms of valuation journey, we can take you, of course, that in the form of like the initial investments. The initial investors are seeing sort of a 4 to 5x jump currently, and we do want to keep this sort of a momentum going. But yeah, so clearly the ROC as a number, it would be difficult to put in right now because, of course, as we discussed, that we are currently.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to merge 2-3 questions that are there. Trying to keep it in time. What are your plans? I think we covered this, right? India, Indonesia become your primary markets, right? But somebody's asked this question, scaling beyond India, right? What's the visibility of that, right? How quickly are you exploring to enter some of these markets? Given that, you're now into a much leaner business, this could be a much sooner or a quicker possibility, right? What are the plans there?
Absolutely, it is. And so that's the reason why I mentioned Southeast Asia and Gulf. We've already received fleet interest from both Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, as well as the UAEs and the Bahrain. So we would be planning a direct visit with them probably end of this year or early next year, where we want to first set up the existing channels, understand the market there a bit, and then in a year's time we can definitely look to venture there, because of course those players are also interested only because of the fact that sort of the brand leverage that Altor has currently and the work that has been put out. So we want to nurture those relationships and absolutely build them in a way that in 8 to 12 months time we can start the activities there. And in order to do that, the preset steps would begin in the next 3 to 4 months.
Interesting. Shamik, one quick question. What's the price point of or the per unit sale that you're doing? What's the number there?
Right. So for the B2B, as we said, that the idea currently, of course, in smaller quantities it will be higher, and also we all are aware of that. The idea for the entire B2B COGS is to get done within 800 to 1,000 rupees, and then charge a monthly 150 rupees from there. So along with a one-time 300 rupees onboarding cost. So we look at the LTV of each device for a customer to be 24 months. So with that in, we are expecting a 75% gross margin on each setup.
Okay, interesting. What's the post-money valuation that you are seeking? And I'm bundling this question. What's the utilization of funds of the money that you're raising from Tyke?
So primarily we want to, let's just take the second question first.
Sure.
So primarily we are looking to utilize the funds, number one, to further strengthen the tech and to acquire the customer. So as I said, we already have a clear interest pipeline in place. The entire focus is on delivering that right now and in fulfilling those orders and in taking it to that scale. So user acquisition, really stabilizing the tech to ensure that all the loose ends are sorted. And then, of course, to some certain degree, building the brand. Now, when I'm saying building the brand, we don't necessarily want to spend heavily on quote-unquote marketing that people often send in ads or anything. We have a ton of interesting plans where we want to engage the community in a way as to, number one, develop that aspirational factor. And second, to really build our mood in this space.
Interesting. And you're not. I'd love you to talk a little more about valuation as well. That's a question that has come in.
So sorry. No worries. So as I said, the pre-money valuation for this round is because it's a CCD round. It's at a floor of 25 and a cap of 49. So we are raising rough about $500,000 in this entire round. So with adding that in, I would say the post-money sort of the floor would be around 28 or odd, and the cap would be 52.
Interesting. I think somebody who's deeply in is passionate about riding and is also sort of carries incisive business sensibility, right? He's asked this question: what is the reason for going forward only with B2B model instead of a B2C model? You've answered that through the course of the conversation.
Sure, I'll take it up again. Yeah.
I think it just makes so much sense, right?
Absolutely,
that a lot of what you're doing, will help you establish that brand and individuality and recall, right? In a B2C environment, when you're building that direct relationship. B2B does not necessarily help you do that, right? You just become like a service provider in the process or a hardware provider in the process without necessarily any recall or that relationship with the customer, right?
Definitely. So I'll take this
deep and a meaningful question.
Yeah, and I'll take that up. And I thank the person, who asked this, because I think this is something that is very natural for anyone to think, right? So we have a very clear reasoning there. Number one, when someone is, bringing out a new product in the market, which is sort of home developed and, made and structured, it's really important to give it that time to get stabilized sort of in the market with users and everything, which is very difficult to do in a B2C case, right? Because then handling after sales becomes a massive challenge without setting up the entire distribution. With B2B, number one, we get to test the product out as thoroughly as we want. And, we can have customers while they're already paying for that. And that really helps, say, a tech company, someone which is engaged in hardware, to absolutely nail down the basics and all the nitty-gritties of it. And then it completely leaves the opportunity open for us to venture out into B2C, which, as we discussed, we'll do definitely in some time down the line. And also for B2B, what's really important is, I think as a product, as a company, it's very important to keep up with our mission, right? That what is the burning problem? That if we ask ourselves, we'll see that the fleets are facing this burning problem currently regarding safety, regarding accidents, regarding rider safety issues. So definitely solving it for them makes a lot of sense in terms of what an immediate adoption looks like. Down the line, we are 100% open to exploring B2C options, and all that we are doing right now is to sort of get ready to get to that stage.
Interesting. My last question, which has been sent to me, and I'm going to open the floor after this.
Sure.
What is your biggest challenge? It's a very open-ended question, but what in the order of priority, right? In terms of how you like to tackle the market. I think your priorities are very clear. You're going after B2B. You want to capture that market. You want to bring in that intelligence, and then essentially use all of that and leverage all of that to sort of get into the B2C game, right? Which kind of makes a lot of sense. You're essentially making revenues while you're also learning in the process, right? That's an intelligent way of doing it.
That's the best way to put it. Yeah.
But what's the biggest challenge? So all of what we've discussed, right? What's the challenge beyond that?
I love this.
How easy is hiring, scaling, so and so forth, right?
Love this question. We can have a separate 1 hour session just on this question. Love it, absolutely. So, yeah, I think it's safest to say that at the stage where we're in right now, with the sort of stuff we are trying to do, there absolutely are a ton of challenges, and there will be. We accept that as a team. If I am to say what's the biggest one, I would definitely say that getting good people, because people often overlook the hiring process or
Sure.
that thing, because at an early stage it's very important to have people who have the same sort of belief, at the same time supremely capable, and to get them hooked to the belief without having to offer them as much money as probably say an XYZ company would be able to. So that definitely, and the reason it's a quote unquote additional challenge is because it's not related to the product, it's not related to the business directly. Indirectly is probably the biggest factor. So I would definitely say that we are taking good steps there, and with some great people already in the team, we are really confident that we can take this.
Interesting. A follow-up question, Shamik, by the same gentleman, is that will B2B customers allow a venture B2C? All of what you're, for example, building in partnership with them, right? I'm sure there are certain bespoke features that you're also sort of developing for them, right? Will they allow you to carry it to a B2C arrangement, right? What's the status of the legal arrangements that you have with these customers that you have in the B2B environment?
I think very interesting question. So what I would say is it is primarily because of what Altor offers. So the offering is pretty common, and that is something entirely controlled by Altor. So we are specifically not bringing in much change in the solution for any individual client, right? That's something we are really focused on, that it's a solution built for all. That is exactly what it is. And definitely there can be minor modifications and customizations for a very slight, I would say 5 to 7% of the solution for those clients. But the other entirety, 95% of it is controlled by Altor. So Altor will hold the power to use that in the B2C space at any point of time if you want. And definitely it goes the other way around too. So even with the licensing deals and the hardware partnership deals we are doing, it's entirely so nothing is like an exclusive deal or something like that. So we definitely, because of all the plans we spoke about, we want to keep the options open.
Super. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground, right? In the limited time that we had, Shamik. It's been an absolutely spectacular session.
Thank you.
I'm going to request Team Tyke to open up the floor for questions. Any of our guests who want to engage and discuss and ask their questions to Shamik, if you can do that.
Yep. Sudipta, you can ask your question.
Yeah. What is your future plan?
Hi, Sudipta. Yeah. So definitely for our future plan, number one is to scale up the B2B front, as well as working currently in partnership with these established players that we spoke about, the likes of Enfield, Vega, Hero, and others, and to get the brand out by putting in as much sort of say muscle power in there to sell the units. Down the line, definitely we are keeping options open to venture into the B2C space, but that is definitely something for the future. The plan is to scale the revenue, to scale the solution for the B2B fleets. We of course looked at every fleet in India and across Southeast Asia and Gulf should have Altor.
Hey Mihir, you can ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity. Just a very quick question I had a follow-up on. Is there a risk of regulatory authorities clamping down? So you should be speaking when you're driving and so on and so forth. And second question is, if you can please slowly clarify on your valuations first for us, if you don't mind. So you raised 50 lakhs at 7%. If you can please break it down, how are you raising it? Thank you so much. Thank you. Is there an option to get in touch with you in person? Is there an investor relations person at Altor that someone can reach out to before the round closes? Thank you so much.
Sure. I think there was some voice disturbances, but I think I got the questions, Mihir. So to start out with, you asked about the valuation and whether there is an investor relations team at Altor, right? So I'll just answer that. So for the valuation, currently for this round, what we are doing is we are doing a convertible note round. That's the entirety of the round. We have a lead investor in place already, and we are closing in on a few last partners. And the valuation floor is a 25 crore pre-money, and the valuation cap is at a 49 crore. So with a discount of 20%. And I think you asked about the utilization of. So the investor relation, definitely, we can't afford anything exorbitant right now. We have a very small team, and we do have someone who takes up and follows these questions from the investors. And definitely, we would love to have anything that you want to ask there as well. And I think utilization of funds is the last point, if I'm not wrong, that you mentioned about. So for the Shark Tank round, the way we utilize the fund, number one is that was already a plan of us to really, number one, set up this sort of assembling channel to ensure that we can fulfill the kind of orders that we receive, because we were selling in the range of 100 200, and right after that we have orders upwards of 9,000 to 10,000 units. So in order to set that up and in order to make this sort of a pivot in the modular form, that is sort of mostly where we have spent the money in. And we have sort of been lucky that we haven't been able to reach out to customers, and it has been the other way around. So that bit has been saved from us to a good degree. Please let me know if I've missed anything, because there was a slight voice issue there. Oh, I'm sorry, regulatory authorities. So sorry. Yeah. So that is, again, I'm glad you asked this, because it's a very common misconception out there. So number one, now that we are in the module space, we are absolutely in no way, shape or form, under any sort of a compliance check. Even when the system was inside the helmet, the Motor Vehicles Act in India does not, prevent anything like that. It simply states a line that you cannot have, both your ears covered while you're riding, right? So that is something we have really taken care of. The speakers mostly are fitted on one side, and there have been enough ISI tests. So in ISI, there are also audio tests that are done, whether someone wearing the device with a built-in system can hear an audio, say, from a 20 feet distance or a 10 feet distance. So these are tests that are done by our partner firms. And with that we are 100% and completely legal to use.
Okay, Shamik, I have one quick sort of a question, just an add on this one, right? Are there any legal liabilities on you as a player, right? Because there is a certain intervention that you're possibly doing in the process of riding, right? Is there any such liability? Have you considered all such scenarios?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've really spent time behind this, because I think it's a very important point. So the answer in a very simple and direct form is no, there is absolutely none. And it's mostly the misconceptions, the sort of prejudices that people have, and I'm really glad that the person who asked it at all here. So it helps me clarify this point. So the law by no means prevents that. It's often something that some people do out of prejudice. And in the module especially, there is absolutely, because it falls in the accessories category, right? Completely gets away from the headgear. Even in the headgear that we're working on, we are completely compliant with ISI.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, super. Do we have any more questions?
Yep. So Vivek, you can ask your question.
Yeah, possibly the second last question of the day, right? So.
Yeah, good evening and thanks for giving me this opportunity.
and a great session by Shamik and Team Tyke. So I had two queries. I think first query is answered, which is about the post-money valuation. I just need some color on how this convertible equity is going to be issued, and are we going to be equity shareholders from the day one, or is there any waiting period and then the equity is going to be converted into the shareholders part? And the second query is about the revenue part. So I just need clarity about the projected revenues by financial year 2027.
So I think great question, Vivek. So if we have to if I have to answer the first part first, so the convertible note for this round, as I already mentioned, so for the Tyke investment, we are usually looking at a 12-month period for our next fundraise when this gets converted. And to answer the second bits of your question, so in terms of a revenue projection, if you ask, so as I said, last year it was with 3 months of sale, it was 5 lakhs. This year, currently, we are targeting a 1.5 to 1.75 CR. The next financial year, we want to scale that up to an 8 CR and to a 40 next after that, and then to a 95 to 100 the year after that, which is just sort of, I would say 25, 26. And, we are really looking, when we say this, we are really looking at a very pessimistic growth rate, which is sort of, what it's based on. But the idea is to, of course, really, take it forward from there. So the 26-27 projection that we have currently is of INR 400 crores, where sort of all the models that we have already discussed about kicks in, and we have already started setting the groundworks for that, and we want to start explore the insurtech option, especially from the next year itself.
Thank you.
Splendid, Shamik. I think you've answered pretty much all the questions, right? On behalf of Asia Tech General Team Tyke, of course, you're already in touch. Right, we wish you all the very best. I think what you are out there to do is create a very, very critical impact, right? We are a nation which is largely dependent on two-wheelers. Two-wheeler, sales defines the mood of the nation, right? In many ways, it's a very critical macroeconomic factor, across many researches that are done and undertaken, right? We wish you all the very best, Shamik, because you're bringing in a certainty in one's life. Right.
Thank you so much.
And this is while it's business, right? It's extremely meaningful at many levels. We wish you all the very best, for your future plans. These are early days, but I'm sure there's an exciting journey ahead. All the very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as a closing word, I would really, like to thank anyone and everyone who is being a part of this journey with us. Yes, we believe that we are a young team and we can do a lot of good things together. So it's an honor for us to have whoever is coming in. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot.